Shalom, everyone. This video is recorded for the assessment of the Ethics of Translation unit for the Master of Translation program at UWA. I'm very honored and privileged to have the opportunity to interview a translation master in our time, Professor Zhang Ping from Tel Aviv University. Professor Zhang Ping has had translation experiences for 40 years since the 1980s. Originally from Beijing, China, he's now settled in Israel as a professor in East Asian Studies. His specialization is Hebrew to Chinese translation and Chinese and Jewish culture comparisons. His most important translation works include the translation of classical texts of Pirkei Avot and the Mishnah and Shai Agnon, who is the Israeli Nobel Prize laureate in literature in 1966. Professor Zhang also translates other genres, such as opera, poems, songs, and photos, etc. Hope you will enjoy this video too. Thank you. Hello, Professor Zhang Ping. Thank you very much for your time and your support. So the first question will be like a brief introduction of your background. So I am aware that you hold a degree both in Chinese literature and world literature from Beijing, Peking University, and you also have a degree in comparative philosophy from Tel Aviv University. And you are the Professor Hava of Chinese East Asia Study at the Department of East Asian Studies in Tel Aviv University. And so as I understand correctly, that's academic tenure. So in China, you're actually known as the very Chinese who understands Israel and Jewish people the most. Maybe you would like to give me or the other people who are viewing some background on how you came across Hebrew learning and Israel. Have you had any connections before?
No, I didn't. I finished my BA degree on Chinese literature, and I got the chance to go to the back then it was the Department of Eastern Language and Literature, a very small department in Peking University, to do my MA degree. And as a requirement of the department, I had to learn a second foreign language other than English, and I have to choose a Asian language. And back then, at the beginning, I thought I was interested in the Sanskrit. Back in Department of Chinese Literature, my interest basically is in the classical Chinese literature, the classical Chinese poems, etc. So I was interested in Zen Buddhism, so I thought I would study Sanskrit. And my supervisor of my MA degree in name was Professor Ji Xianlin. He's very famous in China and he's a great master of Sanskrit. And so at the beginning, I thought, okay, I'll follow him. I will study Sanskrit. So at the beginning of the semester, at the beginning of my first academic year, so I went to the office of the department to register my course. And then the secretary of the department said, okay, this year we have a new course, new language course. We started a new language program. It's called Hebrew. And it is the first Hebrew language program in whole China in the universities. And basically nobody in China knows this language. So I actually didn't know what happened to me, but I said to the secretary, okay, so I want to choose this language course instead of Sanskrit. So my first teacher was a young American. I think he just graduated from college 2 or 3 years, and he went to China to teach English. But he was originally from Israel. He grew up in Israel until age 16, so he speaks Hebrew fluently. And then I was kind of fall in love with the language and all the Jewish culture, Judaism, everything is connected. So my graduation thesis, my degree dissertation for the MA degree was research on Bible, the stories of creation. So I changed my whole direction. The whole modern Hebrew learning started from Chinese Army. The Chinese Army, the intelligence department of Chinese Army, back in 1970s, they organized the first modern Hebrew class in Qinghai, in Qinghai, in a very remote place. So they organized a group, a class of something, I don't know, 20 students, 20, 30, not students, soldiers, and their teacher It was Xu Xiangqun. I think he's a major. He was a graduate of the Department of Eastern Language and Literature in Peking University. His major was Arabic, and he studied Hebrew by himself because Arabic and Hebrew they're all of them are from the Semitic language, so they are close. They needed a dictionary, so they just sit down, they bought a copy of the dictionary, Hebrew English dictionary, and they just organized people to translate this English into Chinese, and they translated the whole dictionary. And dictionary was printed in China back in 1970s. So they printed something like, I don't know how many, 50 copies of the dictionary. And no, the only Chinese teacher in Peking University's Hebrew program back then was one of the students in that class.
Wow.
And she brought the only leftover copy of that dictionary to
Oh,
the department and asked students who want this copy. And that copy cost 10 yuan. 10 yuan back then was a lot of money, but still it's a huge dictionary. So I said I want to buy that. So I bought it. And that was the first Hebrew, English, Chinese Hebrew dictionary in China.
wow.
And it's a rare book. That dictionary helped me really from the beginning. I translated I translated including Pure. I used a lot that dictionary, and I'm still keeping that dictionary with me.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. I guess that dictionary can be like museum exhibition like in later.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah.
very rich
Uh,
history. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
My first translation was back in Peking University when I was a second year student of Hebrew language. So second year, there was a teacher came from America, a new teacher. She's a doctor. She has a PhD degree from UC Berkeley on biblical Hebrew. And even though it was only second year, she started to take us to read the stories of Shai Agnon. The Israeli writer who won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1966. And Shai Agnon was a great writer, and the stories that he wrote, the novels, really fascinating to read. And I got this background of literature because my major in BA studies was Chinese literature. So I was really fascinated by Shai Agnon story. So even though I was only a second year student, and so I told my teacher, I said, okay, I want to translate his story into Chinese. And also, nobody ever in China read his story, and nobody ever translated his story, especially not from Hebrew. And so I started. It's a story, I think, like something like 12 pages or something. It's a photocopy, and it's only the text, only the Hebrew text, nothing, no footnotes, no explanation, nothing, no English translation. It's only Hebrew text. So I sat there. On one side is Shai Agnon's Hebrew story. Another side, this is the dictionary that I bought from my teacher. So just word for word, I look for words in the Hebrew dictionary, and then I just write down every word. What does it mean? And then I try to figure out what's the meaning of the sentence, what's the meaning of the paragraph, and what was the meaning of the whole story. So that was my first translation of Shai Agnon. And Shai Agnon, and I should say, his Hebrew is a very difficult Hebrew because it's not a modern Hebrew or daily language. His Hebrew has a lot of elements from the biblical Hebrew, the ancient Hebrew, and he deals a lot with the Jewish tradition, Judaism, etc. So it was very difficult. It was very difficult, and I knew the difficulty. So back in China, I finished my first translation, and I published it, and that was the first Shai Agnon story, Hebrew literature I thought that was translated and published in China and translated directly from Hebrew language. I think that was right. And but through this translation, and later I translated several other Shai Agnon story, and the more I translate it, the more I understand how difficult the language is.
Mm.
And the more I realized that I had to go to Israel to study, and I have to improve my Hebrew in order to understand more. And I, all the time, for years, I dare not to look back, to go back to look at my translation because I thought I made, tons of mistakes there. But so I feel ashamed to look at it and how dare I publish it back then. And 4 years ago, in China, they organized a collection of Shayagdong stories
Mm.
to be published in Chinese. So they asked me, so I gave them my three stories are translated, include Argonaut. So I told them, I said, okay, but Argonaut, I need to do it all over again. I know there were a lot of mistakes. So I took the story, it took me another 2 weeks to work on the story, to retranslate it. But you know what? Amazingly, I didn't find a lot of mistakes. Not the amount of mistakes that I imagined. So
Wow.
I look back, I saw myself, I did pretty much okay. There
Wow.
were mistakes, like all translations, but not that terrible. Not as terrible as I thought, as I have been thinking all these years.
Oh wow. Yeah, it must be a comfort when you realize that you didn't make mistake, but everything was actually quite well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I found
Yeah.
it's really amazing. Like when in your second year of learning Hebrew, you started translation already. And what makes you feel so connected to Aglon? It sounds like you translated a lot of his story.
First of all, it's a great literature. I came from BA degree of literature,
Mm.
and his stories are truly amazing. So I really feel fascinated by reading his story. And then stories are deeply connected to the Jewish tradition, to Judaism, and everything. I was interested because basically I'm someone who is interested in tradition, who is interested in classics. So even though it's modern Hebrew literature, but it actually tell us about the life of the Jewish people
Mm.
from the ancient time until today. The life in Shayach story, actually the Jewish life in Shayach story didn't change. Didn't change. I would say didn't change much. I think for 1,000 years, even 2,000 years. When you read Shai you start to think maybe back in the biblical time, the Hebrew people lived like that, and they did things like that, and they spoke like that, and so it gives me really an insight about how the Jewish tradition was living. It's a living tradition. It's not a dead tradition, a tradition only on papers. Started learning Hebrew with the first Chinese class. It was 1985.
Yeah.
And I came to Israel in 1993. So that's basically 8 years after I started to learn Hebrew.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. So you described your first job, and what do you think, in your opinion, which one is your best job as a translator?
That's pickable. That's pickable. I came to Israel at the beginning. All time myself. I'm a literature guy, so my research field should be literature, and I concentrate on the literature. The first book that I bought here was the Shah Yagadon story. When I was registered to Tel Aviv University, accepted to Tel Aviv University for PhD program in 1994. I was accepted as a PhD student for comparative literature, and basically the Shai Gadong and Chinese writer. I thought about literature all the time, but at the end of 1993, suddenly somebody came to me. That was Rabbi Adin Standards. And back then, I didn't know how great that guy was. I just thought, okay, it was a Jewish rabbi. So you have thousands of rabbis in Israel. Yeah, but later I realized I think standards in 1970s there was an article in the Times magazine about Rabbi Abin Standards and called him one of the greatest sages in the past 1,000 years. Actually said a sage like Abin Standards in Judaism you get one in 1,000 years. So so he came to me he came to me and he said, that was 1993. 1992, China and Israel established the diplomatic relationship. In 1993, he came to me, he said, uh, now it's the time for Chinese people to learn some Jewish classics. if we look at the future and we want to develop this relationship, we need to let Chinese people to understand what Judaism is, what Jewish tradition is. So I suggest that you translate the Pirkei Avot into Chinese. Back then, I didn't know what, I had no idea what is Pirkei Avot. I knew about the Bible, I knew about the Sha'ya Gnome, the modern Hebrew literature, etc. What is Pirkei Avot? Yeah, I had no idea what Mishnah was, what Talmud was, nothing. And also back then, if you go to look for the books published back then in China on Judaism, on Jewish people, it's always Bible, and then they directly jump to Karl Marx. Yeah, it's the whole period in between. It's like never existed. The Chinese people knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about it. And so he came to me. He said, "The Pirkei Avot, I want you to translate it into Chinese."
Wow.
So back then, I took some Hebrew classes in Hebrew University, and I didn't have a lot of things to do. So I thought, okay, I'll translate, even though I didn't know what kind of book it is. So I gave me a Hebrew copy, and he gave me a copy of the English translation. So I started to study, and I started to read. And I mean, when I started to translate, I was amazed to see how much similarities that I can find in this book, between this book and Confucianism, Chinese classics, yeah, the Chinese tradition. And so I really, for 3 months, I read a lot of books about Judaism, about Mishnah, about Pirkei Avot, about this period. I really dedicated myself to this text, to this translation. I treated this text as my own text, as a text from my own tradition. It's so I translated. If you read it, I use a lot of elements from classical Chinese because this is what I think this text should be. When I translated it, I thought this is a Chinese text. This is a Chinese text. So I translated. I write it. I write the Chinese like what I thought Confucius would write like this. Mencius would write like this. Yeah. So I translated. But then another thing I found out is that I have to give footnotes. There's no way that I don't give footnotes and people don't understand it. So I start to write footnotes for people. Then I met Alexandra several times during the translation. So he wanted to talk to me about how translation was going. He wanted to make sure that I get everything right. And so I talked with him, and then he realized that I was not only translating, I was also adding my own footnotes. And then he got worried because and he was worried for a good reason because back then I was ignorant. He could say that I knew nothing about Judaism and everything. So he said, okay, you don't use your footnotes. I will write footnotes for you, and you translate the footnotes as well. So this is what we did. The footnotes today, what was it today, most of the footnotes were his footnotes. Part of the footnotes, especially the biographies of the sages, that was my footnotes. So this is later I realized the biggest issue with translation of the Jewish classics, because Jewish classics, they are kind of open text. Open text, which means there's some kind of ambiguity of the text. The meaning is not definite. The meaning of the sentences, the meaning of text are not definite, are not really clear. It's not unarguable. So it's always open for questions, open for it's open to questions, open to arguments, open to different interpretations. So the later when I started my Mishnah project, the key issue that I want to address to is how do we both translate the text and somehow in a way to keep the openness of the original text. So this is most difficult thing to deal in this kind of translation.
Which one do you think is your most challenging translation?
Definitely the Mishnah. Mishnah is a paragraph. One paragraph is called one Mishnah. It's one halakha, one Jewish religious law. Yeah, and of course some Mishnah is longer, some Mishnah is shorter, but I can do a translation, include my footnotes. Maximum, I would say 5 Mishnah a day.
Wow.
After five Mishnah, you get really very tired. You stop thinking, you stop composing text, everything. I couldn't do it, I couldn't continue. So maximum usually I can do three Mishnah a day, maximum. I can keep the quality of the translation and keep the footnotes right. I couldn't do more than that. Kind of. It's very tiring. When you do it, it's really like a in Hebrew, in Jewish tradition, they talk about this argumentation, the halakhic argumentation, the Talmudic argumentation. They call it the war of Torah. It's a war that you are fighting. It's really like a war. It's very exhausting. It's not really like that. When I do it, it's very strange. On one side, I see it's very difficult, it's very hard, and very exhausting. And on the other side, I can feel kind of pleasure, I feel happy.
Mm.
And that kind of happiness and pleasure, I cannot experience from any other things. I don't get that kind of pleasure from any other thing that I do, including traveling, photographing things I loved a lot, but they don't give me that kind of pleasure when I translate Mishnah and write my footnotes.
Wow, yeah, thank you. So my question was like for all the challenges and that you have that you had encountered in translating Mishnah, how did you overcome these challenges?
I just give you one, two things I did. I think one is that how to deal with the openness of text, and I found the most efficient way, the best way to deal with it is to translate into a Chinese. It's a modern Chinese, but very much involved classical Chinese. Classical Chinese also is also a kind of a open language. It's open for interpretations, open to discussions, etc. It's a language not that accurate. It's not accurate language. You can debate on the meanings and everything. So I use a lot classical Chinese elements in my translation. It's easier to translate from Mishnah Hebrew into classical Chinese than to translate into modern Chinese. It's
Really? Wow.
yeah, it's much easier. Sometimes when I look at the Hebrew text and when I think about it in Chinese, it automatically, naturally, what occurred to me was a sentence from classical Chinese. So I
Mhm.
try to make it modern. I try to make it understandable to modern Chinese people. But still, I keep a lot of elements of classical Chinese, and that really helped me a lot. That really helped me a lot. And the second thing I do was the is to put a lot of footnotes. If you have my translations, it's always I have a lot of footnotes. I tell you what's the most problematic thing with this kind of translation. Openness of text. This is one thing. This is a major challenge. But there's something I it's much more problematic is that what I call is a paradox of what I call is the paradox of the translation. What I mean is that you translate you when you give the exact translation of some term, uh, at the same time you actually mislead your readers to misunderstand that term. I'll give you an example. There's a very important concept which is called in Hebrew called Chokhmah. And Chokhmah, you translate into English, they translate into wisdom, and
Mm.
you translate into Chinese is 智慧.
Yeah,
That's the exact translation of Chokhmah, word to word. Yeah,
yeah.
right? But Chokhmah is actually not 智慧. That's the problem. Because Chokhmah in Hebrew, in Jewish tradition, in Judaism, Chokhmah is the top concept of the whole concepts of the tradition. Chokhmah includes Torah. Chokhmah includes the virtue. Chokhmah includes the righteousness. But in Chinese tradition, 智慧 is wisdom. It's only one of the six or seven most important virtues, and it's not the first one even. So it's really not the same concept.
Mm.
But when I translate this Hokma into Chinese, I don't have other words. I don't have other terms. I have to translate into 智慧. This is what I call the paradox of translation. You translate and you kill it. Yeah, you
Mm,
translate and you kill it. And I'll give you another example. In Hebrew, in Judaism, there's a term called olam haba. Olam haba means the coming world, or the
mm,
next world.
mm,
Yeah, and in Jewish tradition, Judaism, it means uh, the world actually after the final judgment. After
mm,
final judgment, you go to paradise, and that paradise is actually the olam haba. This is the next world for you. Yeah, you have this world and you have next world. When you translate olam haba into Chinese,
mm,
you have no choice. You have to translate it into 来世.
mm,
Yeah, ba is 来 and olam is 世.
mm,
No problem. You have no alternative. Yeah, you have no other option. You have to translate. But
mm,
来世 is not olam haba. 来世 in Chinese, this is a life cycle. Yeah, you died and you come back to this world again, and this is your wish. Yeah. So this is another example of a paradox of translation. You translate the term and you kill the term. Yeah.
mm,
So in for this kind of a situation, I think the only solution that we have is to give the footnote. You translate it into 来世, you translate it into 智慧, and then you give footnote, and you explain clearly. This is we call it 智慧 来世 because we don't have other way to say it in Chinese.
mm.
But they are really different. Yeah, they are really different term. And it's not what you think. So it's not perfect. It's not a perfect solution. I mean, a lot of people like to read the translation. They don't want to look at the footnotes. But we don't have a better solution. Yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Well, I read the footnotes for the
You read it also. Ah,
yeah,
great.
I do. I want to ask, maybe a little bit related to the question you were just, the part that you were just sharing. Like, in translation, there's a very centered discussion in, from multiple scholars. Like, when there's no equivalent elements that can be found in the target language or culture, so like certain realia in the Bible, they can be different, they can be altered. I'm sure, like, you also come across a lot of situations like this before. So, like, for example, like in shofar, in a few Bible translations, it was translated as trumpet, or like the tzitzit, and it was translated as the fringe of the cloak or the hem of their cloak, etc. And then,
Mm,
or in certain places, it was what the original writer might be meaning to say talit, but then the translation they didn't have the equivalence of talit, so they used prayer tent or tabernacle or things like that, and then so later on became like, oh, the person might be making talit, but actually translated into he was making the tent or making the tabernacle. So things like this, they are different. Some translation, they are different from the original realia, the different elements. So what's your opinion on this? And yeah, so in your experience, you shared about footnotes, and are there any strategies in your dealing with them when you come into translations?
I do a kind of some kind of playing with words. The best translation is that the best translation, the ideal translation of the terms, in my opinion, is that you give the phonetic translation, and you also use Chinese characters to give people to make people to understand the meaning of that term, or give them some kind of information about this term. For example, a very simple example is how do you translate kashrut? Yeah, kasher or kosher in English. Yeah.
Mm,
You don't have such a term in Chinese. You don't want to translate into Qingzhen or something. You don't want to confuse it with the term from Islam or something. So you can translate, I think the best translation, you translate phonetically. Yeah, you translate phonetically, but you choose the word, you translate into 可食. 可 means it's possible, it's allowed, and 食 means to eat. It's a new term. It's a term from the from Hebrew. It sounds like Hebrew. So this is kind of I mean, this is the ideal I was looking for. But I also realized, of course, you don't have a lot of terms that you can translate perfectly in this way. So
mm.
mostly you have to invent new terms in Chinese, and the only solution I can find is that invent a new term and then give a footnote.
Ah,
Uh, I don't say otherwise. One thing in the Mishnah, in the Seder Moed,
mm,
the second chapter, the second volume, yeah, it's Eruvin. And Eruvin I translate into Yuwen. And I think this is an example, for me, it's a perfect example of how to translate this kind of terms. Yeah, and the Yuwen is phonetic translation, but it gives us the meaning of what does Erowin mean. Yeah, Yuwen, it means actually there's a line there, there symbolize the border of the walking distance in Shabbat. In Shabbat, you cannot walk out of this border. So on that border, they put a line there, they put a thread there, etc. A rope there, or something. And then you can find a way. For example, you store a certain amount of food and drinks on the border. Then the border extended for another 1,000 cubits or something like that. Yeah. So it's like I move this border outside or inside. Yeah, it doesn't matter whatever that means. So this Yiru means move inside, and one means a kind of rope or land or something. So it gives you gives you the information about what this term is about, and at the same time, it is also a phonetic translation, and it's easy for people to communicate later with Jewish people. We are talking about Erovim, so oh, this is in Chinese called Yiru, and it sounds the same. Yeah. So this is, I think, the best translation you can expect. But we don't have a lot of a lot of this kind of time. You can do this kind of perfect translation. This is what I call the perfect translation. But we don't have much. We can some of them we can do. I do as much as I can.
So in your translation, have you ever used like computers or other technologies or artificial intelligence to help you with your translation?
No, I didn't use them. And if you read my WeChat public channel, I wrote an article about ChatGPT. I tried ChatGPT,
Mm.
and I put there the ChatGPT translation and my translation side by side. And you can say ChatGPT cannot do, no, ChatGPT can do something like the translation pickable. Not as good as my translation. Literally to say this, it really is not. It can translate, it can give you some kind of correct translation. So it's not a wrong translation like the Google Translate gives you. It's an okay translation, but it's by no means a good translation. It doesn't have a style. It's not like when I translate pickable, I think this is a Chinese text. I will give it a ton of Confucius. I give it a ton of Mencius. ChatGPT doesn't have this kind of idea. Yeah. But for text like PKO, it gives an okay translation.
Mm.
But for text of Mishnah, what I tried the Seder Nashim, the Seder Nashim, I gave it the text about halachot, about the law, religious laws, and about the argumentation of the laws. ChatGPT completely lost it. It doesn't know what the text was saying, and it doesn't know how to deal with it in Chinese language. It's do nothing. Okay, this is one side of the story. There's another side of the story. I must admit, because AI improves itself very fast, and it learns the ChatGPT didn't know how to deal with text of Mishnah because I don't think they gave my Mishnah translation to ChatGPT to train it. If they gave ChatGPT my Mishnah translation to train it, I think soon enough it will learn the tricks how to translate, how to deal with this kind of a class Mishnah text. I can say that day welcome. Yeah, that day is coming. But still, I don't think they can replace us because they don't have our understanding, the personal understanding back from my background, my whole learning about Chinese literature, Chinese classics, Confucianism, the dialogue between Jewish and Chinese. My understanding of the text is a unique understanding. And my translation, my Chinese, my style of my Chinese language is a unique style, and we make mistakes. I mean, in a way, I think mistakes gives the life to the translation.
Mhm.
Mistakes gives the life. We make mistakes for a reason. Okay. Some mistakes are simply stupid mistakes, but mostly when we say it's a mistakes come from my culture. It's a mistakes from my tradition. It's a mistake from my personal experience. That is my understanding of the text. That is this is the value of the translation, and this is the value. This is why we need more than one translation in every classic text. You look at the Analects of Confucius. You look at the Laozi. How many translations do we have out there? Yeah, and every single translation has its own value, because this is the translator's own opinion, its own understanding about this text, this specific understanding of this text. So the translation of the classic translation was never about the give the right translation of the original text. It's always about give a new life of the original work in a new cultural environment, in a new language environment, in a new society. That's a new life. I appreciate the development of AI, and I hope, I expect to use it as a great tool in the future. But I don't think I will stop my work. My work.
Wow, thank you so much. Yeah, it's a very heated discussion recently in translation circle about AI.
In university, I teach course like classical Chinese. So in the past, the exam of classical Chinese is very simple. I look for classical Chinese text, and the text that never been studied by Westerner, by foreign people, and was never translated into English or any other foreign language. And I show text to students. I said, I give you 3 weeks, and you give me a translation. Yeah, nowadays it's not relevant this kind of example, because students can give the text to ChatGPT. And ChatGPT translates classical Chinese okay, 95%, 98% right. So I tell students from the beginning, you can throw it into ChatGPT and make it give you a right translation. Yeah, but that does not replace your translation. It's not the same thing. So what I ask students to do is, first of all, you feed text to ChatGPT and a ChatGPT version of translation, and then you argue with ChatGPT. You tell him, here I don't agree, there I don't agree. I think I have a better way to translate this, and give me the reason. So eventually, what I ask students is, give me the ChatGPT translation, give me any English translation you can find, and then give me your translation, and give me footnotes on translation. Say what's the difference between your translation and the other translations, and why. Yeah.
Mm.
And I think this is the ChatGPT. What the AI gave us the chance, final opportunity to show the world what is real meaning of translation is.
I want to touch on the ethical issues that you may have faced as translator. So here in Australia and New Zealand, we have the code of ethics here. So we have like 9 principles. There are professional conduct, confidentiality, etc., etc. So all of those codes are designed to help translator to make decisions. So my question was, are there any equivalent codes of ethics in Israel or in China that you're aware of, or have you encountered any difficulties in translation where you struggle to make a decision?
No, Israel is, they call themselves an informal country. It's not formal. Nothing is formal. For example, in America, you want to teach Chinese, you need to get some kind of license or qualification to work as a teacher. In Israel, no need. Nobody checks this kind of qualification.
Oh,
Nobody check your license. The question people ask, can you teach? If you can show people you can teach, then it's okay. Israel is a very practical country. It's everything practical. It's good. Yeah, if you can translate, if you can give me the right translation, if you give me the translation that I need, I don't care what kind of code you follow or you don't follow. So nobody was talking about this kind of code. I was invited by the association organization of translators in Israel, I think twice, to give the lecture, and I sit in the panel, and I heard them talk about translators. I never heard about this kind of code or etc. Just make your job done. In Chinese, actually, we had I think it's a widely accepted code. It's called 信达雅. You definitely know about it.
yeah.
I think this 3 principles enough. It's enough for translator. Yeah, you give a right translation. Yeah, you give a translation that people can understand, and you give a translation to use language as beautiful as you can. And that's all. And that's all. Why do I need more than that? I really don't get it. The question that you asked me in the email about cursing. So if first of all, I never encountered this kind of problem. But I think if in original text there was a curse, I don't think it's morally right if you try to, to somehow make it sound nicer, or somehow make it not less I don't know less offensive or something. I think it's right to deliver the original tone of the language of the work of the text to the readers. And I mean, we are translators. We give the work a new life. We are not teacher of the moralities. Yeah, and I think basically I try to treat my readers as somebody equal to me, and they are not less wise or they are not less educated. Yeah, they are not less moral than I am. So why should I teach them about morality? Let them judge themselves.
What about the like when you if you for example if you encounter any illegal content etc. to translate like would you consider reporting it or what would you do in situations like that?
I never encountered this kind of problem. The only encounter I encounter is because my publications are in Chinese in China. So there's a thing with the censorship in China. Yeah. So it never happened to my translation. My translations are classics, so nobody cares actually. It happened to my writings. Sometimes encounter this problem of censorship. They said, okay, this part of this sentence is too sensitive. We cannot publish this. So basically, what I tell the publisher, tell the editor, is that you can delete whatever you want to delete. I just ask for two things. One, you don't add anything. Everything published is what I wrote. It's not something that you wrote.
Mm.
And second, before you publish, you must show me the final draft. One of the Chinese magazines, they published one of my articles. They invited me to write that article. I gave them the article, and then they add uh, one or two sentences in the middle of the article, which is completely contrary to my opinion. So later I protested, and they said we have no choice. We have to add these two sentences. So no, this is kind of thing. But otherwise, I think I also have my colleagues. Some of my colleagues, they got their book translated and published in China. They had the same problem, and we have the same principle is that I want to publish in China. And if you say this kind of content is not allowed in China, you can delete them, but don't add anything by yourself. Yeah, just keep my work. I don't need my work to be keep complete, but it should be my work as well.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing. So do you have any tips for the future translators or interpreters or like students who are learning translation? Any encouragement, any visions or anything that you would like to say to them?
I think the major thing with the translation, if you want to be a real translator to translate some kind of major works, it's not business translation or something. Want to really translate major works, the culturally iconic works, something like Mishnah, like Talmud, like Bible. Yeah, if you are committed to this kind of project, it's very important for you to find a person, to find a character as your inspiration. I want to be him. Yeah, I want to do his kind of work. For me, that character, that inspiration for me was the Zhang in Tang Dynasty, who went to India. He brought back the Buddhism works, and he translated or organized the translation. So that inspiration I have all time in my mind. I want to be remembered as a modern time Xuanzhuang for Judaism to Chinese. Yeah,
Wow.
so this kind of thing keeps me going. For major work, for a major project for translation, it's a very hard job. It's very hard. It's you have to do it every day, and as I say, the things like Mishnah, they are very difficult. They are very exhausting. So you need something more than daily life needs, so more than your material needs. Something give you that kind of inspiration and keeps you going. This is what I want to say to the younger generation of
Wow, thank
translator.
you. Yeah. So do you do missional translation every day recently?
Yeah, unless I'm traveling, I travel a lot, unfortunately, and unless I really teach, 4 day or I go to conference something. Other than that, pretty much every day. Yeah.
Wow. So like how do you start your day as a translator when you're translating Mishnah?
I have my bookshelf just beside my computer. It's all the reference books I need for translation. And so I just sit down when I find time. I open my Mishnah text, the documents, the translation documents, and I start to read and I start to translate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always put some music on, classic music.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you very much for your time, Professor. Yeah, I think that covers almost everything I wanted to ask. Is there anything that you would like to share before we end?
No, no, I think I pretty much said everything I wanted to say. And
That's
thank you for inviting me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about it. Okay. Thank you.